And you didn't expect the silence that followed. You didn't expect the weight. You didn't expect how the air would thicken. You only perceived that something cracked, and once it cracked, you could never unsee it. You stand inside the echo of that moment. It replays without mercy. It digs without asking. And the more you push it away, the more it returns, whispering. Not from the outside, but from inside your own ribs, from the place you once believed was untouchable. You shook them, but in truth, you shook yourself. You didn't realize it yet. But the gesture was more than a gesture. It was a fracture, and fractures never stay still. You perceive this now, slowly, painfully. Like a photograph you tried to burn, but the ashes keep reconstructing themselves in your dreams. You thought it was simple. One move, one decision, one exit, but the shadow of it followed. It grew legs. It wore your voice. And every time you try to forget, you stumble against it again. They never expected it, and that's why it pierced so deeply. That's why their silence weighs so much heavier than their words ever could, because silence has a way of making you face yourself. You shook them, but who shook you? What storm prepared your hands for that gesture? What secret ache made you act when you weren't ready? You thought you were the one breaking away, but weren't you the one breaking down? You perceived it the moment their eyes shifted, the moment the invisible cord snapped. You felt it in your skin. Your body knew before your mind admitted it, because your body remembers everything, even the things you swore you buried. And now the question haunts you. Did you really end it? Or did you ignite something that still burns, hidden in both of you? You thought time would heal. You thought distance would erase. But time doesn't erase. Distance doesn't numb, time exposes, distance magnifies. What you tried to cover begins to speak louder, and the louder it speaks, the harder it is to hide. You perceive the pattern now. You perceive how one gesture carries centuries of unspoken history, because it wasn't just about them. It wasn't just about that day. It was about every wound that never found a voice, every silence you swallowed, every mask you wore until it glued to your face. The last gesture was only the tip. The real storm was underneath, and when you shook them, you felt the aftershock rip through your own chest. You already know what I'm saying, because your heart is reacting right now. It beats faster. It remembers. It resists. But resistance never saves you. It only delays the collapse. You already perceive that collapse, not as a future threat, but as a past wound still leaking. You shook this person with your last gesture. They never expected it. But you never expected how long the echo would stay, how it would change your reflection in every mirror, how it would color every new beginning with the dust of what was unfinished. You wanted to be free, but you carried the chains with you. You didn't notice at first, but you feel them now. Tight, invisible, relentless. You thought you left them behind, but the truth is you brought them into every room since then. You hear their silence even in crowded places. You see their absence even in other faces, because absence is louder than presence when it's unresolved, and maybe that's the part you couldn't escape. The unresolved, the unspoken, the unsaid, that's what keeps returning. That's what keeps shaking you when you least expect it. You told yourself you were strong, you told yourself it was necessary, and maybe it was. But strength without truth rots. Necessity without healing poisons. And you're only now perceiving how much poison has been flowing quietly inside. You shook them, but you broke yourself. You thought they were the ones carrying the weight. But haven't you noticed? Your steps are slower now, your laughter costs more now, your nights last longer now. You keep running from that moment. But every road brings you back here. Every conversation circles back here. Every quiet evening drops you back inside that silence, because you cannot run from yourself. And in truth, this gesture wasn't against them. It was against you. It was you betraying the part of you that still longed to stay. You wanted to cut, but the blade cut deeper than planned. You perceive this now. Even if you deny it, your body remembers. Your skin remembers the exact moment you turned away. Your bones remember the weight you carried home. Your chest remembers the hollow it never filled. And that's why the memory never leaves. Not because of them, not because of the gesture, but because it revealed you to yourself, and once you see, you cannot unsee. You shook this person with your last gesture. They never expected it. But now, neither do you. You never expected the way it would still haunt you. You never expected how the silence would bleed into your future. You never expected how much of you would remain tied to the very thing you tried to kill. You thought it was over, but endings are never clean. They carry echoes. They carry debris. And the debris becomes part of you until you decide to face it. The real question is, have you faced it yet? Or are you still pretending it was only about them? You know the answer. You feel it. It's there, under your ribs, right now. A pressure you can't fully name, a shadow you can't fully silence. You shook them, but you're still trembling. You thought you ended a chapter, but in truth you began a confrontation with yourself, and it's only now, in this moment, that you perceive how deep it goes. You already passed through this. You already know what I'm describing, but you avoided naming it. You avoided perceiving it, until now. And maybe this is the part where I ask you, have you ever felt this weight return when you least expect it? You already know the answer. You shook them, and it shook you. And even now you're still inside that tremor, because what shakes you once will keep shaking until you face the source. And deep down you perceive it. The source was never them. It was always you. You thought you buried it. You thought you sealed the wound so deep that no hand, no memory, no voice could ever reach it again. But you perceive now that nothing buried stays quiet. The ground shifts, the soil breathes, and what you tried to silence crawls back through the cracks. You told yourself it's gone. You told yourself I moved on. But lies dressed as affirmations still rot inside. And you can smell it now, can't you? That faint odor of something unresolved. You shook this person with your last gesture. They never expected it. But you never expected the aftershock. It wasn't loud. It was subtle, invisible, slow. The kind of shaking that loosens your foundation grain by grain until you no longer trust the ground beneath you. You sense it now, that groundless feeling. That quiet vertigo in your chest when you remember. You think it's gone, but the body perceives. Your pulse quickens. Your skin tightens. The wound doesn't forget. And what you buried rises sharper than before, because pain does not disappear. It waits. It watches. It returns when you're most defenseless. You thought you were free, but freedom cannot exist where denial builds walls. Your walls became your prison. You decorated them with new faces, new words, but at night the wall whispers back the truth. You shook them, and you saw the light go out in their eyes, and that image branded itself into you. No matter how far you run, you cannot unsee their collapse, because it mirrored your own. You perceive this with each memory. Like shards of glass, the fragments cut deeper every time you hold them. And you hold them anyway, don't you? Because some part of you clings to the very pain that kills you. Why? Because it's the last proof that it mattered. The last proof that you mattered. Without it, you fear there's nothing left. So you hold the wound. You reopen it in secret, because you'd rather hurt than forget. You'd rather tremble than be empty. You didn't just shake them. You shook the illusion you built about yourself. The illusion that you could walk away untouched. The illusion that you were stronger than your shadows. But shadows always win when you pretend they're not there. They crawl back into your bed when you're most exhausted. They whisper your name in your own voice. You feel it now. That tightening in your chest. That old tremor returning. You told yourself it was necessary, but was it? Or was it desperation disguised as courage? You told yourself, they'll recover. But did they? You told yourself, I'll never look back. But haven't you been looking back every day since? You perceive the cycle. Every road leads you back to the last gesture. Every smile cracks when silence returns. You perceive how unhealed wounds demand to be reopened. The truth is raw. You didn't just wound them. You split yourself in two. The part that acts, and the part that regrets. The part that leaves, and the part that stays tied to what was abandoned. You never left completely. You carried the ghost. You carried their absence in your bloodstream. And every word you've spoken since then carries the echo. You think time stabilized the quake, but the quake never ended. It still vibrates in your bones. It still stares back at you in mirrors. You didn't heal. You only learned how to limp gracefully, but your core still trembles. Your soul still bleeds. You perceive this now. The silence inside you is screaming. The absence you tried to ignore has teeth, and it bites when you least expect it. You collapse when the room is empty. You shook this person with your last gesture. They never expected it. But the greater shock is this. You still haven't forgiven yourself. And until you do, the wound will not close. It will remain open. It will remain alive. And you will remain chained to the very moment you tried to escape. You thought leaving gave you power, but power without peace corrodes. You thought silence meant safety, but silence without closure is a grave. And you've been living in that grave, pretending it's a sanctuary. The truth whispers louder now. It doesn't let you sleep. It doesn't let you rest, because it knows you must face it. You must name it. You must walk back into the fire you lit. Not to undo it, you can't undo it, but to perceive it fully. To see yourself not as the one who left, but as the one who broke. And maybe this is the moment where you ask yourself, how much longer will I carry this ghost? How much longer will I bleed in silence, because the tremor will not stop? Not until you face the ruins. Not until you admit the fracture. Not until you step into the silence and let it speak back to you. You shook them, and that moment shook you into who you are now, a carrier of absence, a witness of silence, a survivor of your own destruction. And even if you hide, even if you smile, you know, you perceive, the wound still breathes, and it will keep breathing until you stop running. You thought the wound was punishment. You thought it was evidence of weakness. But the deeper truth is this: the wound is your doorway. The cut you keep hiding is the exact place where light is waiting to enter. You shook this person with your last gesture. They never expected it. And you didn't expect that in breaking them. You exposed yourself. You didn't expect that in silencing them. You awakened the voice you've avoided all your life. The wound became your compass. The silence became your mirror. And now you perceive everything you feared is the exact thing that calls you higher. You resisted. You numbed. You drowned yourself in distractions, but the truth keeps pulling you back. Because truth doesn't need your permission to find you. It waits in your ribcage. It waits in your dreams. It waits in the cracks you tried to patch with temporary masks. You perceive it now. The tremor that began with your gesture wasn't destruction. It was revelation. It was the collapse of the false self. It was the crumbling of the walls you thought were protecting you. The gesture wasn't an end. It was the sound of your foundation splitting so you could finally rebuild. You feel the shift inside. Your chest knows it. Your breath falters because you are not who you were before, and you will never be that person again. Something died in that moment, but something else has been waiting to be born. You are still trembling, yes, but trembling is not weakness. Trembling is birth. Trembling is transition. Trembling is the proof that the old version of you is falling away. You kept thinking, I destroyed everything. But what if you only destroyed the illusion? What if the wound you caused was the mirror you needed to see the wound inside yourself? And what if their silence was not condemnation, but initiation? An initiation into facing what you never dared to face before. You perceive this. It hurts. It burns. It strips you down until nothing remains but truth. But isn't that what you've always needed? To stop living inside masks. To stop performing strength while you're drowning. To stop pretending you're healed when you're bleeding every night. This is the collapse that saves you. The shattering that makes you whole. The breaking that becomes your awakening. You cannot escape it. You cannot bypass it. You can only surrender. Surrender is the word you've been avoiding, because surrender feels like defeat. But look closely. Haven't you been defeated already? Defeated by silence, defeated by memory, defeated by the ghosts you carry. And still, you are here, breathing, shaking, listening, perceiving. If defeat hasn't killed you yet, maybe it was never defeat at all. Maybe it was preparation. You shook this person with your last gesture. They never expected it. But maybe it was never about them. Maybe they were the vessel. Maybe they were the mirror. Maybe they were chosen to hold your shadow for a moment so you could finally see it. You hated them for collapsing, but their collapse showed you your own. You blamed them for silence, but their silence forced you to listen to yourself. You thought you ended them, but in truth, they awakened you. And that's why you can't escape the memory, because it's not about what happened outside, it's about what began inside. And that process is still unfolding, still cutting, still shaking. You perceive it now as a prophecy written on your skin. You are not defined by the gesture. You are defined by what rises after it. You are not chained to the silence. You are called by it. You are not doomed by the fracture. You are invited through it. This is why your chest aches when you remember, because your body knows you are standing at the threshold. You can keep running. You can keep numbing, but the wound will not let you rest until you step through. Step through the silence. Step through the trembling. Step through the shame. On the other side of what you fear most is the version of you that has always been waiting. Not the broken self, not the masked self, the true self. You thought you buried it, but the true self does not stay buried. It claws through the dirt. It breathes under the rubble. It screams inside your denial. and it will not stop until you acknowledge it. The moment you do, you will perceive differently. You will see that nothing was wasted. Not the wound, not the silence, not the collapse. Even the gesture you regret became the crack where your soul could finally emerge. This is the turning. This is the reckoning. This is the fire that doesn't destroy you, it purifies you. You are standing in it now. You feel it burning, but it is not the end. It is the passage. The darkness you feared was never punishment. It was initiation. And the trembling inside your ribs is the sound of your own rebirth. So let it burn, let it shake, let it cut. Because you will rise from this wound with eyes that see further, a voice that speaks truer, and a soul that finally stops running. You shook this person with your last gesture. They never expected it. But the greater revelation is this. The gesture shook you awake, and now you can never return to sleep. If this pierced you, if you felt the wound reopen as you read, don't keep it silent. Subscribe here because the next video will take you even deeper, where no mask survives. Comment the word that describes what you felt right now, raw, without filter, and share this with someone still pretending they're healed. This isn't just a video, it's a mirror, and someone you know is desperate to see their reflection.